And Zola, it's your turn.
Yeah. Yes, it's my turn. I'm a Zulu woman, so I'm a native, I guess, Zulu woman. I speak Zulu and a few other languages here. And at the moment I'm in Cape Town, which is where my daughter is situated. But I also live in Zululand, which is KwaZulu Natal, what is it? East. Where is it again? It's east.
Yes,
on the coast.
east.
It's on the coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of in the middle of South Africa, but right on the east coast. And that's kind of where a lot of the Zulu people live. That's where they're situated. They're all over the country, all over South Africa, but that's kind of like the base homesteads and the rural spaces there. Currently, I do quite a few projects. I'm a permaculturist as well, and I'm a doula. I am an artist, and
oh, you're frozen, Zola.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. Are you in a bit of a low reception area?
No, actually, I'm not, which is very puzzling. Anyway. So, yeah, I mean, you can ask me pretty much any questions that you want to ask. But I was explaining just before I got cut off that one of the family members where I'm living, where I've landed, is building in a natural way. And so she asked me to help her. And so, which was just amazing. And so I got to kind of be part of that. And I'm still part of that. And so that's when I had a conversation with Zola to kind of, it's been great to kind of talk about this experience with her and to kind of integrate it even a little bit more and to talk about the land rights around how we do things in South Africa. So I don't know, Zola, how do you want to do that?
Oh, there's so many. I know. I'm thinking, wow, there's so much interesting things to share. I just had a question. Where in KwaZulu Natal are you?
So I'm in a place called Ndwedwe, and it's about an hour away from Durban Airport.
In the north
Durban
part.
is in the northern middle part of East South Africa, if you like. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Ndwedwe. So that's.
Is that your land in Ndwedwe? Is that where either your parents or your ancestral land is there?
Yeah, so a lot of the land kind of lives under the ancestral or tribal authority, and it's and so different families get given different pieces of land in like years ago, and so a lot of the land is still under that kind of custodianship, and so my grandfather or my great grandfather received one of these pieces of land from the king, from the ruling structure at the time, and when apartheid happened and colonization happened, a lot of the land got transferred into the government structures or the structures that kind of are more around commercial money. And then there was certain kingships decided that they did not want to do that. And so there's two systems that currently happen in South Africa where you have land, which is obviously banks and all of that. You get a loan and you buy land and you have a title deed. And then there's a different structure where for the tribal people, land, you go to the ruling kingship space, and then you ask for land, and then it's very, very, very low price, like very, very low, not at market prices at all. And so at the moment with the whole country, what's happening is that they're really trying to keep the structure going, because there's been like they want to change the system so that we all go under banks. And obviously there's a lot of people that don't want that, a lot of rural people that don't want that, tribal people from different tribes that don't want that. So we're trying to, as much as possible, to keep that system going, because it really contributes to food security. People can still have their old land rights intact. So those are the two systems that are currently going. So I'm on the tribal system and own land in that way. And that land particularly happens to be the land where my grandfather and grandmother used to live. So I'm right on the foundations of their house, which is absolutely amazing, because apparently not a lot of people get to return to those specific spots. And so a few people in the area say that it is quite a special thing, because I'm returning directly on the ancestral space. They are my grandfather's grave, because obviously all the people get buried around the area, and so all the graves are there of my grandfather and grandmothers, and all of them are there. And so it is a very special piece of land that I have, and it's quite a large valley. There's a few there are a few families living there already, maybe about 10 families living in the village, I would say. And everybody builds, most people, build naturally, because that's what they have. It's not so much a choice. It's just what they have. They have mud, they have the forest, they have wood, and they have cow dung, and so that's what we use. It's very much based on necessity, and what's available. Yeah.
Oh, I've got a few more questions. I just need to say something to my son, because I think he's leaving shortly. I'll put myself on mute.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, yes, I didn't want to interrupt, but yeah, we've got our dinner. He's so there's a few things that I wanted to add, to just maybe have you share about that. So with them, so it's the Ingonyama Trust, I believe, that holds that land and stewardship for any. It isn't only the Zulu people, I believe. It's any of the tribes that are, because we've got so many different tribes in South Africa. It could be any of them.
Yes, yeah. So I'm not so sure if the Ingonyama Trust actually is inclusive to all the other tribes, but I know that it's primarily for the Zulu people in South Africa. I do know that there are different setups in, for example, the Xhosa tribe also has their own setup with regards to land rights for their own people. And I know a few other tribes have those things as well. I do believe that it would be so fantastic for us to create a system where all of it is inclusive in one kind of land trust, where I described it to Zola that it's people focused, it's people centered systems, and not so much money or what is it? Money systems. That, because I mean the difference here is that if I lose this land that I have, I don't end up on the street. It's built in a way that I can never be without land. So those are kind of like the fundamental structures that have been built in. Like if I, let's say, have a dispute with somebody in the village, they will give me another piece of land in a different area, which is the same amount. But I will never be landless. And also my children will inherit this land, and I will be able to use it just as much as I can use it, because my grandfather used it. And so it's that kind of gets passed on through the generations. Whereas in the other money system, if you obviously don't pay the bank for, I don't know, 3 months or something, you basically are landless and you end up on the street. So there's kind of like differences like that where it's much more, I don't know, like it feels really people, like they really take care of people's security and so yeah, it feels more homey, if you like. Like I don't have to worry about losing things, and I can always negotiate. It's largely around community and relationships and how to negotiate with people and land and the relationships that we make. I mean, I remember when I was being placed on the land, some of the questions that they wanted to know was, what skills am I bringing to what skills, what is it that do I know? What resources am I bringing? And what participation do I feel I can have in the village? So these are the kind of questions that um, um, so, these are the systems that we really need to protect, I guess, and create for me that I feel. And partly why I'm now situated there is because it feels more like a human system, or more like that really takes care of people um, and asks us to really work on the relationships that we have with people, regardless of whether we agree with them or not. Yeah.
Yes, from what I remember, and I'm not sure if it was like this when you came onto the land, because it has been your ancestral, and so you're going back to that rather than coming in as a little bit of a different person from that community. But because when you were saying they were asking you, and what I remember of the system was that there's the chief overlooking and the Induna, which is more of a local person to that particular area, and then it's the others who are already living there that are the ones that are brought into a little bit of a celebration, a little bit of a party that's held, and it's like, oh, so you want to live here, you want to be on this land here. Well, we'll bring in the community, and we're going to have a party, and we're going to ask you some questions. And I guess so was it a bit like that? Were the other community members brought in? And was it a little bit of a party getting to know you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting, like as you say, coming as an outsider, but also not being an outsider, because my family was based there. And so there's certain stories about my grandfather and grandmother that I didn't know, that I've now come to learn. And of course, they didn't know that I existed. And so I've arrived in the space as a Zulu woman, but also I'm coming as a townsperson, whereas I'm already kind of like a different person to who they are. And so there's still kind of that integration process that I'm still working through, because there's just a lot to learn of the way of the land, of the way that they've figured out how to live on the land and how they do things where they are. And so when I did arrive, there are 2 ceremonies that had to happen. And one of the ceremonies that had to happen was the land ceremony, where the land is like the spirit of the land. They invoke the spirit of the land to welcome me back in, or to welcome me back in. And so we did that ceremony to be welcomed in, because the spirit of the land is very, very important in Zululand.
Is that with the Sangoma? Who does that ceremony?
Yeah. So the Sangoma can do that ceremony, but also the chief and the Induna can be there, but also the Sangoma can be there as well, because then they kind of, what are they? They officiate, not officiate. They hold the ceremony, if you like, of what needs to be done, because they're more connected to the spirit world. And then there's a strengthening of the people that are on the land. There's the strengthening of the land and the strengthening of the people. There's a ceremony that we did around that. Actually, there were 3 ceremonies, so that's the strengthening. And then there was the placing ceremony, where I was then placed on the land, and that's then where the whole village is invited. People get to see where my land is, and that's also just so that people know where the boundaries are, because so that everybody gets to know, like, oh, okay, because then the chief is like, okay, your land is from this tree to that mango tree over there, and that river, and it borders the river here. And so when he's saying that, there needs to be witnesses and people who are there and present to see that, and then they also know. So then the knowledge is not just with a few people. And then after that we had a boogie. I had to buy, so obviously the person that is being placed, which is me, I had to buy I'm basically the host, so I buy all the drinks and the food and what have you. And that's just for them to also see, my resources, how am I coming, how am I arriving in the space with the people, within the land. And and my brother came, which was very special. So they got to see some of part of the family, my immediate family. And it was great. It was really good. I got to meet quite a lot of the people in the village, and very interesting characters, as you can imagine. Very interesting how people have figured out how to live, and how and all the interpersonal relationships that they've created. So we did all of that. So we did, and the important thing on these ceremonies, they're really, really important. They're really, really important. Especially the spirit ones are quite fundamental, so that the land welcomes you, and.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear. I hadn't heard about the spirit ceremony as well. So that is really amazing that, the ancestors are probably called, and the spirit of the land is called.
Yeah.
And wow, that's very special. Hold on, it seems like my son.
It's very similar to Māori people, Zola.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. That's right. That's why we thought it was such an interesting conversation with Zola, because there is actually parallel with the indigenous processes of land acquisition, reacquisition, or land families coming back onto their ancestral land.
Yeah.
Wow. Very
Does anyone
similar.
have any questions or comments for Zola at this point before we talk about, because the next part of the conversation, I think we'll talk a little bit about the building, the women building, and that feminine process of creation. So any questions or comments about that land part?
Oh, her name's Zola. Oh, did it go on? Right.
Okay.
I was wondering, how long have you been back? Like, I don't know if it's been back the right expression, because you're just going there right now, but and if you have any other family members in the village.
I don't have any other family members in the village, but I've been back since October last year. So I've been wanting to move since March 2020, but then lockdown happened for us. So I've been waiting that whole time, trying to move back, and then I had an opportunity in October to move, where they lifted our lockdown, and then I just decided to just go. So I've been there since October. And so my immediate family now doesn't live in the village, but everybody knows my mother. So I'm continuously hearing stories about my mother, my grandmother, and the fields she was an organic farmer, and she passed away when she was 100. And so there's these fields that are there that she used to grow, that everybody continuously, the older generation there, they want to know who I am. Everybody wants to know who you are. And so there's that element of being in family, but just not my immediate family. But I know that all the stories of people that I know that have been in my family, and so there's that element of it.
And who left? Did your mom leave? And then how did it happen?
Okay, so my grandmother, this was my grandmother that left in 1960, and because she was in she left. And she left all her fields, and so I also wanted to know, when she left, was she sad about that? And apparently it really tore her apart to leave her field and leave her everything there, but she had to leave at that time. And the land has just been sitting up until the time that I came. And so in the valley, there have been other people buying the land under this traditional land system, but this spot here was not being taken. And so when I did arrive, everybody just really felt it was something. Yeah, there was something that was, yeah. I did resist it for about 2 weeks when I arrived, because there's a lot it was a lot to take in for me when I first came in. And then they sat me down and and I had to kind of, I think it was just an initial kind of shock response of what was encountering, and then it was good after that, because then I realized that I was being supported by more than just me, that the people in the village, actually, they really do believe in this in the support system coming together, and so they supported me to be present and to be there to do the ceremonies and to do everything that needed to be done. So that was really special. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
And I wanted to add, Zola, if you find in your area that if someone, says they want to come and occupy a piece of land, but then they don't use it, they just, there's no land banking, basically. You can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to preserve it. So for when I want to come, if the chief realizes, oh, this person's not really coming and doing anything on this land, not adding value, they basically just say, well, you didn't use it, so you lose it. Is that true for your area as well?
Yes, that is. Yeah, that is very true, actually. They basically absorb it back into the trust. And so even if you do want it back, then you have to go through that whole process again, if it's really something that you want. But this land, you cannot just keep land kind of lying for years and years and years. Like I said, it's a people system. So if people need to use that land, then it becomes available for people. And that just, and that also keeps the prices down for people who can manage. So people who are not working, it keeps it to a level that they can still have a piece of land, that they can maybe grow something. So a lot of it is about food security. A lot of the land has been kept for people to just have food security, to build like a small house. I mean, even the chief is already reminding me. So they're very quite strict about that. And so he does message me and say, how long have you been away? You need to put a certain structure. And the structure that can be on the land doesn't have to be like a double story. It doesn't have to be like a fancy anything. They just want to know that you're committed and that you are really wanting to be there. And they just want to see that you are being involved and you're participating, and that you're just one person that is participating in this web in the community. So it's not really about, oh, we're going to just take it away. It's not, it's not about that. It's more about they're trying to bring in that level of community and people to really be involved and do things. And yeah. So yes, it very much is there.
Yeah, and like you said, he's messaging you. So when are you going to start to, really establish yourself? And so that kind of, I guess, leads me into the next question, which is, so you were saying about people build with what they have available. So do you find that people are actually harvesting from their own land, or you were mentioning about trees and things like that? So how does that work with a natural resource in terms of people being able to harvest from somewhere, and does it always have to be on their own land, or is there a little bit of somewhere else in the community? So like if you don't have any wattle on your property, but you, wattle being the that tree, but you see that it's other places, how would you be able to get that wattle to be able to do a wattle and daub?
Yeah, so just going into also the experience with my family member. So there are a few connections that she had with people that have access to wattle forests. And so we talked to one of the village people, and they then go out and cut the wattle for her. So there's like lots of kind of various systems like that of people in the village that know where to get it, and then we just kind of source it in that way. But on the land itself, there is quite a nice forest where people, there's what is it? What is this tree? Oh, I just forgot now. But there's bamboo. There's quite a few things growing on the land, and so people, a large amount of the material, let's say 70%, can be got from the land itself, like the mud and yeah. So what we've used, I mean, the only thing that's come outside from the land that we are is the wattle. That's the only thing. But the bamboo is from just 100 meters away, but 150 meters away, because we've got like a bamboo forest there. And the mud is obviously just there, and then we just use our and all the builders are local. They basically live like 500 meters away, and so everybody is just in the space. Nobody's really, not too many people are outside of that cycle. And there's also like a protective energy around that. Some of the builders really don't like it when you bring in new builders or builders from outside. They do tell you that, like they did tell me that. And so there is kind of like they just want a very closed kind of nice system where everybody's creating things locally and supporting the local economy. And really strengthening those relationships. So, I mean, the grandmother, so we have arrived where the grandmother lives, she's very much around making sure that the relationships that we create in the village are good, so that we can have that system where we're helping each other, where I can call on people to build and call on people for certain things. I mentioned to Zola the cup of sugar economy. And I'm sure everybody knows what I mean, the cup of sugar economy, where you can go to somebody else's door and ask for a cup of sugar. That system is so vibrant and alive. It was really surprising and shocking for me how it works so well. Even with people that even with neighbors that you're not friendly with, that you can still go, because there's a system that is underlying all the whatever happens in our relationships. There's still like a wanting to support you, even though I'm not really friends with you, but I'll still give you rice and sugar and all of that. So that was like really, I don't know, it feeds something, or it nourishes like a human kind of system where I know that I will be taken care of, regardless of whether or not the neighbor likes me. which is quite interesting, because there's a certain stability around that. So even with the building, there are people on the building site sometimes which we don't really get along with, but they're there because we just building together, and we sort out whatever it is, we just sort out, and then they leave. And so there's a system that supports everybody regardless, which is great. Yeah.
I just wanted to interject a little happy memory I have from Impentle. I don't know if you've ever been to Impentle, but I set up a little community-based tourism program, and it was actually so easy. I would just drive around this part of Impentle, quite the rural, really in the heart of it, And I just was going around to different families saying, you know, I'd like to have a homestay program here where foreign students will come and they want to learn in the community. Would you take a student into your house, treat them like your family, you know, put them to work, fetching wood and water and helping to cook and clean, you know, making space for them to sleep somewhere? And would you do that? And the community was just so excited about that. And I'd say, do you know any other families that would like to host? And then it was to the point made, all I needed was to start with one family. And then I say, well, who else do you recommend? You know, and then I'd go to the next family, really just knocking on doors at that point. And it was very easy to put together this homestay program. And it felt very safe as well to bring these, you know, foreign people in. I actually felt, you know, they're all looking after each other. I know I can trust the families because mothers, you know, they were the head of the household looking after their student, new family member. That I said to them, you know, call them your daughter, or, you know, and they loved it. And it was just such a lovely program. It was so easy and lovely for those, you know, for those reasons, as you were saying, you know, looking after each other and the students. It's just it's still today one of the most popular places of when those students come, and they have all kinds of places to go. But Impendle is one of the most memorable places for these students, because in those few days that they're there, there's just this warmth and this immediate, you know, of just, you know, wrapping around, you know, of the community spirit with these people that they have never felt before. And it's just such a radical thing for them. But it was very important for me that was part of the, you know, the transformation work that I do, for having people who just come from a very individualistic kind of a culture to really feel what it's like to be in the kind of culture and place that you're talking about. So that just brought,
I mean, when I arrived, that wrapping of somebody, it's like I said, it's quite an interesting feeling to feel when you've been living in an individualistic, like where you have to strive for yourself and make it, and, you know, do this whole thing by yourself. And then arriving there, and there's already a bed, there's already all these things that are available, and all you need to do is just participate as well in creating that. You know, like I participate as much as everybody else. I fetch the water from the river, which I have to also carry on my head, and from the river, you know, and I also cook. I do chores every day. You know, and a lot of me that participates in the space is very body based. You know, I get to really use my body in a lot. You know, cutting the bamboo, you know, mixing the you know, the mixture, the cob mixture, you know, and so it's a lot of it is just that. And then we all gather in like the kitchen in the night. We love gathering for like 2 hours in the night, which sometimes I don't do, but it's just this kind of different system that I guess I didn't grow up with, because I grew up in the town, and which just feeds people on just such a different level. And it's just so welcoming. And like, I mean, I don't know even how many times that the neighbors have come to ask for food from us. And there is this part of me that's individualistic as well, which sometimes doesn't know how to interact with that. And then it's so quickly then, like, of course people need help. of course every time I'm giving a cup of rice or a cup of whatever, I'm basically strengthening these bonds with the people. And it's not about, oh, now they can come to me and no, it's just around, you know, being available for that interaction and the flexibility. And these systems, like I say, really need to be protected. Like, that's what I've realized being there now the last 8 months, I guess, is that there's something that really needs to be protected there, where we don't go too much into this other world, that it's okay to have two systems. We don't all need to get absorbed. Yeah.
Well, I was,
Yeah.
it was really interesting for me when I came here to New Zealand. I felt very sad about being separated, you know, being in suburbia, but not knowing anybody, being so close, but feeling so isolated. And it was just feeling a very foreign kind of a place to be in, suburbia. And when I first went on to a marae, so a marae is where the iwi, the tribal, each tribe has their own marae, which is made up of different buildings. So you have the whare nui, which is the large building, and that's usually a night where everybody puts the mattresses down and sleeps. But it, you know, lots of things happen in the whare nui, which is the large house. And then there's the kitchen and the eating area, the dining area, and then there'll be a whare paku, which is the toilet shower area, and then a few other little structures. So that's usually what makes up a marae. It's, you know, those collection of buildings, and it's where the Maori go for celebrations and funerals and get-togethers and all kinds of things, learning as well, wananga, which are learning. And so after I'd been here for, I think it was at least half of a year, and I went on to a marae, and it was a full, what they call noho marae, which is where we were sleeping and staying and really integrating. And I said to somebody, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've actually felt more normal, you know, like there's a sense of, for me anyway, of a more normalness, and a sense of like, oh yeah, this is the way it's supposed to be, and this is the way it makes sense. And then a Maori person told me, well, do you know what the word Maori means? It means normal. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so interesting.
Wow.
You know, that's where I felt normal anyway. So, and it was really the first time that I felt back home, you know, that because I, as you know, how I lived very close to Mpendle and working there, and with those systems. And so, yeah, very much a loss just coming into the colonial style. But luckily we do have the Maori who hold that sense of what you're talking about. We at least have that in those lands, in those spaces.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So, and a lot of people really are craving that, you know, so people here, they want to take a te reo class, which is learning the language. And then usually the te reo class will have a noho marae, and people really want that experience, and really are looking forward to feeling what that feels like. And we have something called the papa kainga, and in you know, the Zulu, you might call it a well, maybe not a crawl, but it's where, you know, the sort of family members all share a space. And here a papa kainga is where family members decide to build a little homestead together, and it could be one big building or again a few buildings. And more people are saying, why is the papa kainga only for the Maori people? Like, the papa kainga, we like that model too. Like, why can't we all have that? Why is it only that on the Maori land, you know? And there's a lot of these kinds of questions because people are craving those more communal, cooperative style. And that is a conversation I believe that we're bringing into the more colonial places of New Zealand, which is, hey, let's try to bring this papa kainga, both in the physicality of it, but in the values and principles that guide that as well. And maybe you're saying the same thing too, I believe, you know, that, hey, let's have more of this.
Yeah. And I mean, and that house where everybody gathers here, I mean, I call it the spirit house, because that's what you have to build when you first land on the property, on the land. You have to build a spirit house for your ancestors. So everybody in Zululand has a spirit house, and that's just a place. It's like an altar or a place where all your ancestors are gathered, and people go there to do ceremonies. So every time somebody arrives, you all gather in this house, and and we just call in the ancestors of the land and ancestors of the people that were on there. So everybody's got like a little hut. They just call it a spirit house, and then you build your main house if you like. And yeah, but generally there's always a spirit house where just everything happens, and that's kind of where then everybody gathers, and it's nice because then there's just more than the physical people in the room. There's like all the grannies, and usually has a very nice feeling to it.
And it's usually mud and dung floor, and usually mud and round, and usually with a thatched, if possible, to be able to have a thatched roof.
Yeah, it's mostly round. It has to be. I'm not so sure why it has to be round, but I'm sure there's like a very beautiful spiritual reason why. But it's always round. It's only probably like now where people are breaking out of tradition, but not even much. There's always it's always and it's what is it? Cow dung on the floor. That's how they paste the building. And even with the house that I was helping my family member, it's just ground. There's no like we're gonna put cement or anything like that. It's like it has to be on the ground, because we have to be connecting still to the ground energy. And so they just break the ground and just start to build the wattle around, and place the wattle as the poles, and then they fill that up. So there's no cement involved. It's just rocks and ground. And then we've got some bamboo, and then we just put it around the structure. I think you've got some pictures. I mean, this particular house that we did was square, just because they'd built a square house before. And so 10 years previously, they'd created a kind of like 2 rooms, if you like, and then one of them broke down, and so we're just replacing one of the rooms, and so it is a square house. On the property, there's how many there's 3 round houses on the property already, and so some of the other houses are just just for living spaces. And then we just started mixing the mud, and we mixed it with a bit of grass, and we cutting the grass on just around the house because we've got a lot of grass area. And she used rocks to kind of make it more stable, which was really interesting. So she was teaching me how to kind of place everything, how to I mean, it's basically like you would do a cob mix, and I've done quite a few cob mixes, and just how you place it. And she just placed it directly on the ground, and it was just such an easy process. I mean, I think this whole idea that building is for contractors and and I don't know, she just really kind of deconstructed that for me in such a big way. And she just created her house and took it up, and I don't know if you're going to show some of the images, Zola.
I was going to say, I just brought them up so we could look at them. Yeah, so
okay.
that would be good. It just reminds me when you were saying, she just, made it happen. I have my colleague in Impendle, and she just went to, there was a little wetland very close to where she had her land, and she had a little frame, a little square rectangle frame. And she basically just made these little bricks and then put them out to dry. And then she had somebody build a little wooden frame, but basically then and then she tells me that she's had a baby. And I realized that she actually built her house, was making these bricks and building her house herself while she was pregnant. I was like, oh my gosh, this lady's amazing. It was just fantastic to see that, she was just slowly, brick by brick, making this home for herself. She had a teenage son, so I'm pretty sure it's pretty much the 2 of them making this house for themselves. And then they brought in somebody to help with the roofing, and that's a bit more technical. But
I mean, like Deborah's asking how long it took. So one of the walls, I mean, literally in a week we had the wattle in, we had there we go. In a week we had the poles in, we had the the tiling in, we had all those bamboo things were put in a day, in one day, and up with all the mud and all the rock in between. It took us probably, I mean, a day for for like the whole wall. There was like, and then we kind of rested like for one day because it was, we were really pushing ourselves. And so it didn't take long at all. You could probably have a structure if everybody's kind of helping, but she's, and just kind of her energy. And so she's now finished, and it took her probably like 3 weeks, let's say, to do it now because she's on her own. I'm not there to help. But it was quite an undertaking. And how big it was, how big it is. So it's about, it's not so big. So she's building a room for 2 of her daughters. She's got 2 daughters. So she's just building a room so that their beds sit side to side, and then there's a table in between. And that's about, I can say about 4 meters by 4 meters. So 4 by 4, I guess. That's how big it is. And yeah, so like I said, 3 weeks is probably like a long time. But it's she's just in there every day. She's shoveling the grass, she's cutting the grass, and she wakes up at like 5 in the morning. So she's just one of those people that's got the energy for it. And then one of the neighbors came and put the roof on, and that took about 4 hours to do. That wasn't very long. Yeah, and so now we're just waiting for the windows, which she already had, and so we're just kind of going to be doing the windows, and yeah, she's going to be plastering it. I don't know if she's going to wait for me to do the plastering, but we'll see. I'm going to ask her, but she definitely wants help. But it's just been one of the easiest things. I mean, it certainly inspired me to just build my own house up on the so that's part of what it looks like now, I think. Yeah, so
Can
she's
you
going to
see
do
that?
just
I don't know whether my sharing is I don't even know if I've still got myself on mute. I'm having trouble keeping it up. It keeps disappearing. But can you hear me? I don't even know if I'm on mute.
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me. All right. 'Cause just trying to navigate. So that's a little bit of a close-up, I guess, of the mud. And you've mixed a bit of straw in.
Yeah, she kind of did mix a little bit of straw in. She didn't use it that much. I kind of just suggested it to her, and then she used a little bit of it, and then she was like, oh, it's actually a little bit stronger than what she was using before. And so she just used that, and then we used some of the brick. And so from the old structure, there were blocks of really cured mud, and so we used some of that, so you can see it like in between the mud. And so that's just bamboo that you see there just going across, that we've just put there. And and so that structure there, she says, will probably be there for about 10-15 years, and she's okay with that. She's fine, and she doesn't mind. She says that when the time comes again, she'll just make another one. So it's just on a practical kind of level like that she's she doesn't think like contractors and things like that. And that's kind of like why I liked it. Like, and even when I was saying to her, I need to also make a house, there was already 2 women that wanted to help me. So I'm wanting to build my grandmother's house. I just wanted to, because I'm on my grandmother's land, I want to make a roundhouse in memory of her. And that house, I'd like it to be built in this way, or more cob and straw kind of way. And so there's already 2 women that are willing to help me, and they they realize that we really need to. That's her over there. And she was just mentioning, we really need to just help each other to make these houses and just to create them, and that we don't need to rely on contractors so much. So that's kind of the energy she brings, which is really cool. Yeah.
I'm trying to get back. I don't know if I'm going to try and stop the screen sharing because it keeps disappearing. But and you had shared an image of the land as well. I was just looking to see if I could find that image. Remember, you had sent me pictures previously I don't know if that was that the land that you were on your land?
Yeah,
Or
I
was
was on my land.
was that your family member's land?
No, that was my land, where the green fields, where it was just
yeah.
green, and that was me. Yeah.
I just thought I'll bring that up as well. I'm just trying to open that up just so people can get a feel for what the land looks like. I'll
Yeah.
just do one more screen share. It is so beautiful. If I can get, yeah, there we go. I was just trying to get Facebook to open up the image, and I'll just do one quick screen share of that. So can everyone see that? That's piece of land there.
Oh yeah. So that's it there.
Okay. Is the
So,
whole piece
yeah.
of land sloped like that?
Not all of it. So that's just a portion of it. That's like a quarter of the land. So yeah, so there's like lots of other land on the left side, which kind of looks similar to that. So, but that's a portion of my land, and then those are just my neighbors. And then across, there's a river down in the valley there, and just people. There's just homesteads all around. Round houses, and usually houses are kind of like in round shape, or placed in a round kind of circle way. Yeah, so that's my. So I'm actually missing it at the moment. I'm missing being there, but yeah.
Well, I didn't get a chance to bring up my photos from Impentle, but I'll share those, post this when I share the video recording. Then I'll put some pictures of, since I mentioned Impentle, then I can find some photos of, the area that I used to work and live, which is similar to Ndwedwe as well.
Yeah, Deborah's asking if all houses are built like that. Most houses, the old kind of houses, are built like that. Definitely, yeah, a lot of the mud structures are just built like that. It's only now, like probably in the last 30, 40 years, that people have started using brick and using cement and bringing in more of kind of like the modern kind of ways of building. But people still build with mud. A lot of people still do. It's just more accessible for them. And that's, yeah. Because also the cement, I don't know, like just working with cement, then you have to have somebody who can work with cement. I don't know, like there's just not a lot of that right now. But definitely people do use it, but just not a lot where I am, in the area that I am. Yeah.
And if the government is supplying homes, then they'll come in with the breeze blocks and the cement. And so quite often you'll see at least one cement home because the government has supplied. That was part of the government's campaign, was to say they will help people with housing. And so I remember in Impentle, whenever I'd see one of those, it was usually a government provided, simple still, breeze block and whatever, but and it's nice that, go ahead.
And the kitchen that I was talking about, the room that we've in, that structure has been there on the land for about, about 50, 60 years, that particular house. And it is stronger than all the other structures that have been made prior to that, which is so interesting. And it's just that's what they've used. They've just used mud, and on the ground is cow dung, and so that's really interesting that it's just been standing there for a while. And I have no doubt that it's going to carry on standing there for another 20, 30 years, which is really incredible.
I remember in some places in Impentle where a bit of the wall had fallen away, they just repatched that piece of the wall. It's just like, this piece of the wall fell. We'll just, make some more mud. And
yeah, so easy. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, please. Let's open it up to questions. Yeah, please.
Yes, please.
I was living in Malawi for about 6 months in a mud home, and I'm really interested in earth building in general. And then I recently was talking to my friend, about earth building, and he was saying how, you know, everyone wants to live in concrete, and even though he, you know, and I kind of explained, and he was saying even though he like intellectually understands that earth building is, you know, more sustainable and cheaper and local, and, you know, all of that, there's this really strong pressure of like modernization, and that people want to, you know, use concrete, not because it's better, but just because then it makes them feel, I guess, more modern. I was wondering, is that dynamic going on in your community as well?
Yes, yeah, there is a dynamic like that. Yeah, there is. I mean, when I was going to negotiate with the chief with the land, he gave me an image of what kind of house that he would like me to build on there, and that house was like a brick house with tiles, and because that's kind of like the image that, you know, I guess the white people here have brought in terms of like colonization, like this is like the status, kind of like when you've made it. And so there is that element of it. And at the same time, what I liked, in contrast to that, when I did arrive, I saw a very proud Zulu man standing next to his mud house. And he just felt so content. Like he had his cows and he had his mud house, and it felt like in the world where you have to get like a whatever R1 million house in order for you to have made it, and social structures and all of that. It's as if like he didn't need to even make another mud house for him to feel that way. That really changed something for me around, I guess, happiness, and just like, you know, and what is actually needed. What do we need in order for us to really be content and happy and resilient and reliant on ourselves? And I'm guessing that he also built it by himself. And so he just like was just beaming with pride. And it just felt like, yes, like I could reach that place, like my capability, where it was more attuned to building a brick house and double story or whatever it is. It radically changed when I saw him, where I could feel that my capability didn't have to reach to that anymore. It could just be, he was my example now. Like, I just want to be him. I just want to stand in front of my rondavels and just be like, I built this. And that's it. And that's it about life. You know, I don't need to achieve more than that, you know. And it's just so nice to see it, I guess, from a Zulu man, and from a man that is a Black man, and that it didn't have to also be this, how can I say, like success always being dictated to by the Western world. Like success, what success looks like, that success can just mean what it looked like to me when I saw him. And I just feel like more people just need to see and be in that. And obviously there's so much legislation that doesn't allow people to build the way that they want to build, and the way that they want to be on land, and, you know, building codes and structures, all of that does not exist there. Oh my God, thank God. You know, yeah, I don't know how what would happen if, you know, you can't build it this high, and, you know, you have to have this and land surveyor. Oh my goodness, no.
And I also just wanted to mention that most of the buildings don't have an inside toilet. They have the ventilated pit latrine. So people have a certain distance from the home and have a pit latrine. And yeah, so the plumbing is simple. And the electrical, somebody just comes around, usually also from the village, to bring a line out from the main line.
Oh my goodness. And I mean, we don't have running water on the property itself, so that's why we need to go and fetch the water. So we just need like about 5 buckets in a day. And so that's also just revolutionized, you know, our whole thinking around water, and how much you need, and what are you doing with it, and the relationship that we have with water, because every land space is interacting with these 5 elements: water, fire, and, you know, ether, you know, air. And how is it that we're interacting with them? So those kind of thoughts have kind of just been really present for me. Like, how are we bringing water? And like just being really appreciative of the water that I bring in. And yeah, blessing it sometimes. Just to, just really being thankful for just having a river close by, because a lot of families also don't. So it's really radical living. I mean, and you could say it's also like a compost toilet, if you like, because there's no water, And then when it's done on the particular property where I am, she basically just puts a tree. So she's put a tree in 2 other places where they had to put trees. So she just does that. We've got mangoes and avocado trees, lots of avocado trees, lots of banana trees. So we've got quite a lot of food that grows on there, which she grew, like 20, 30 years ago. So she's also quite the grandmother. So that's kind of like the culture there. And so me being there, I'm there as a student, or I'm learning just a lot. And I'm just really grateful that a lot of people are very willing to teach me and not kind of excluding me because I'm a townsperson. But if I'm willing to just learn and just be there, then the wisdom and the knowledge gets passed on. It's been an incredible experience. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And is your daughter able to be there with you sometimes?
Not yet. Yeah, she's very much a townsperson.
Yeah, they'll come to the land
there will become a time where she can come. But at the moment, I think I'm just creating foundations and creating relationships. That's basically what I'm doing, just creating relationships that, and just really being there and them knowing that I'm there to be part of,
And when you are there, where do you stay if you don't have your own house yet?
I stay in the grandmother's roundhouse. So she wants me to sleep next to her. So we have like a roundhouse where we sleep. It's like a communal sleeping area. And we kind of sleep all together in one space. And she doesn't want it any other way. So she wants us to, it's also just for safety. And I mean, we do a lot of things in there. There's food. We store the food there. It's like a little pantry. I stay with her. She doesn't really want me to actually, she realizes that I need to also make my own house, but she doesn't really want me to do that. She kind of enjoys me being there now and being part of their little unit, which is great. We have a really great time when we're there. Yeah.
Wonderful. Who else has any questions? Because we've now hit 9:18, and I was going to end at about this time, but I certainly would like anybody who has a question or a comment to be able to contribute or, say anything that comes to you. So Zola can kind of feel like, she has been heard and what she's said is interesting to you. Who else would like to say something?
I'll say something. Something really felt relevant about how you mentioned that there seems to be this social thing of wanting to build. I think, Isa, you kind of mentioned it, of wanting to move towards modernism. And I'm just about to start a new job in an organization, and that's something that I've watched some YouTube clips about the organization, and they've said, we're now making houses more modern, so that there's not any shame around living in a house that doesn't look modern. And I felt so sad to see that. I just am kind of like wondering now how I can be a part of making this shift towards finding pride in building with Papatuanaku, the earth mother, and building with what we have, and find pride in actually sharing and not in having to stand alone, because it seems like it's a definitely I feel it here,
yeah, there's certainly a lot of the shaming of like where you live and the dwelling, and like I said to Isa, you know, we also kind of work through that, and I think that that's also seeped in because of colonialism and like different ways of the, you know, how we then measure success, how we measure like a good house, and that's really seeped in not a good way. And so there are people who are really proud and who really just build the way that they built, and that's the majority of the people, thank God. But there's also like some people who do feel that shame, and you see kind of like then they start doing brick houses. There is just when you go closer to the town where we live, closer to the coast, then you start to see the transition of the houses into brick houses. And people want, you know, really fancy, like even the fences, and also you start having people who are fencing their spaces, whereas in the rural spaces you don't see a lot of people fencing off. I don't know, this idea of fencing off is not so big, whereas when you go towards the towns, then it's like people then have all these kind of like, this is my area. You see a lot of that. And it's also just interesting to see the difference, to see the people that want to keep that the other system going, and who's just more welcoming of the other system. But there's a lot of the shaming. There's the and I think part of the just like taking the shaming out is just to build one of the houses, just to build a house like that and to live in it. And I mean, they also was like, how is it that I want a mud house when some of the people in the family don't want one? And so we're having those discussions of like, I want one because it's it's easy. I've just seen one being made. And so I'm going to have one. And it's as simple as that, you know, without actually explaining it too much. It's just easy, you know, and all the materials are there. Like, why would I now? Yeah.
It reminds me of Marion. I will have to share with you, Zola, the recent post that Marion, so she came to the Women Revolutionizing Housing and said she wanted to build a 30 square meter. And basically the way that you're talking, it's so rare to find here in Aotearoa, but she's really determined, you know, to use every bit of what nature provides around her, and to have it be a community process. So it's such a rare thing. And I'm quite keen to cover her story as well, because we need more of these stories of women believing that they can create their own house, and it's not going to be so ridiculously expensive that that's going to be the problem, or getting materials is going to be the problem, or not having the skills. You know, she's going to prove to us, you know, that it's possible. That's why I wanted to share, you know, you to share your story, you know, because we need to hear more of these stories where women can believe they can build their own place and not be hindered.
I mean, it really helps to not have the the rules, like the building codes. It really helps, because I think if we did have building codes in that area, then it would really, a lot of people wouldn't be able to build. So it really helps to have that freedom. So there's a lot of freedom around that. And I think that's what we're trying to protect, that people still have the freedom to build whatever they want, even if they building like a you know, tiny house, which is, you know, just, I don't know, like one room or whatever size, that they can just do that. And there's a lot of that there. I mean, when I say like grown people, you know, like that just build one little room and that's it, and they don't build anything else. and we've got to just make that okay again, and
Mm.
and normalize that and make it
Mm.
yeah
Mm.
yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
just wanna,
lovely. Oh, that was really rich. Wiki, did you have anything that you would like to say?
yeah, I just want to thank you, both Zolas, but Zola in South Africa now. Thank you for bringing your kōrero, your stuff, to us about what you've been doing. And it's very similar to our culture. What you guys do, and I think so. There's so many issues like for Maori and non-Maori in New Zealand around land, right? And so with Maori, there's Maori who have access to land, and there's Maori who don't have access to land. And then you have non-Maori who are in a worse boat than us, I think, because they definitely have to buy land, in some type of way. And like you say, with the council, not the council, but there's less restrictions for you guys over there, which is really hard over here. So thank you, Zola in South Africa. And my question is to Zola here in Hamilton, New Zealand. How possible do you think, because I'm all for women taking a stand with this type of thing. Going back to Papatūānuku and all of that, it's easy for us to do that, especially us being mothers, and female, connecting to the whenua, Papatūānuku, the land, right? But in regards to restrictions and buying land, like how possible do you think this type of thing is for us in general,
Well, I think it would start with a trust helps. I mean, I don't think we are going to get around the health and safety regulations and all the rest that New Zealand loves.
Yeah.
But I do think in terms of being able to build more creatively, I mean, Marian's going to show us something else, that is beyond what we typically know. And I do believe having land in a trust helps, because that land in the Ingonyama Trust that Zola was talking about, and on Maori land, there's more creativity that can happen with how things are set up and who can participate. And and I just think it takes a bunch of people willing to invite, like Marian wasn't shy to say, I'd like you to pull in, you can sponsor a material or just come and help. And we need more people just saying, I'm making a house and it's going to be a community effort.
Wow.
That's what we really need. The narrative needs to change. Like, again, that's why I brought Zola on, is because she's got a narrative that that's what works generationally. It works for the land, it works for the people, it works for the economy. And that we need more stories like that to see this is how we build the threads of relationships and our connection to the land. It is in this style of building, and it's so very important. Yeah. Oh, Helen, your hand is up. You're on mute though.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I just enjoyed hearing the story about Mary and her intention to build a 30 square meters, because I have young friends here who have bought a little piece of land close by to me in Carterton here, and it has an orchard on it. And so they currently live in Wellington, but they plan to move up into and live in a caravan while they're building their house. And right from the start, they wanted to be as at least less intrusive of the plantings there as possible. And so they found a little part of the property where they could put their tiny house and without disturbing the rest of the orchard. And so, and they've decided that they want to make a mud house and to build it themselves and have and just buy the materials as they can afford it and start putting things together. And so sharing that story is just encouraging me to perhaps encourage them to see what materials they can source without having to buy expensive things. So it's exciting. So they're just going to build this little place where they can live, and then later when they can afford it, they might build an extra little piece on the property, a little dwelling where they can have it for maybe a studio for their work, and have a guest sleeping. So and the other thing, that they're part of a local currency group that I am part of here, and so maybe they can do some trading that way with some of the skills they have, and not necessarily have to use the coin of the realm for everything. So I don't know whether that goes on in your country, Zola, in South Africa, where you have informal currency systems.
Informal, sorry, I didn't hear that.
Currency, like
Current
alternative money.
No, I mean, we're trading in money, but like I was saying, there's this other way that things are done. It's like that, what I was saying is the cup of sugar economy, if you like, where the different families support each other with different
I heard about
resources,
that.
tools, and so they just get passed around the community, and everybody uses them, and obviously there's all these beautiful, interesting interpersonal arguments about all of that, but it's just part of the whole thing. It's not if we need something, I know that we can find it in the families that are there. So that's a strong system. That's what I was saying in the beginning, that I didn't know how strong that system was until I went in there, and it actually holds quite a lot of the relationships there.
Lovely. Thank you.
And just in reference to your friends, I mean, they have the ground. I mean, one of the things that we checked, I mean, we checked really informally just the clay content of the ground that we were on. And we didn't do soil tests or anything like that, but we just, we came with a shovel just to see how much soil and how much clay is in the soil. And we just had a nice, how much was it? Maybe about 3 centimeter, 4 centimeter kind of clay on the surface of what we took out. And we just figured, okay, that's good soil to build with. So it was a very simple kind of a test, I mean, obviously, if you want to do more, like if they want to do a more informal kind of testing of the soil to see how much clay content they have, so that they can actually build something that can work for them. Because obviously, if it's too sandy, then they can't build. Then maybe they need to look at sandbags and that kind of those kind of structures, which is also something that we're looking at doing here in KZN as well. But just simply looking at the content of the soil that they have, and it's very quick to see what you have and what you can work with. And once they put their hands in it, like I'm a great believer in that, the soil and the land starts to tell you what you need to do. And I think we've just disconnected from knowing those codes and knowing how the land communicates to us, and that when we start actually touching the soil, that's when the communication starts to happen, and we start to learn from the soil. I mean, birds are continuously building, there's just all around us, like this building, and and it's just the time to look at all of that and sit in it.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Zola. I hope that you stay connected with us through the Women Revolutionizing Housing. Be great to build our cross international connections, our cross-cultural connections, since there's so much in common, and these stories are very important, and it's been really lovely to hear your personal journey through this, and it's been wonderful to welcome you in and have everyone meet you, and
Thank you so much for inviting me. I was a little bit apprehensive in the beginning, but thank you for because I don't know, like I'm more of like I immerse myself in something and I want to experience it fully before I can share it with people. And Zola was like, no, we've got to share this now. So I had to kind of, so I love kind of really getting into the meat of something and being in there and doing it, and then kind of the sharing happens. But this is good. It's really, yeah. Thank you so much, Zola. Thank you everyone for listening, and yeah, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, great. Well, I'll hopefully get Marion to share her story so you can hear how that's happening. That'll be the next. Yeah, I've invited her to come on similarly. So
great.
Lovely seeing everyone here. Thank you all for participating. And I'm now going to say goodbye to everybody. Oh, teach us just a little bit of Zulu. Come, it'll be so much fun.
Okay. So how you say hello is sawubona, and that means I see you. And it's not just I see you physically, but it also means I see you inwardly as part of me. So that's what that means, sawubona. So we say that to everyone. And then you say sanibonani when you're saying hello to everybody. We are seeing you all. We are here and we're seeing you all as a manifestation of everybody here. What's another one? Unjani, how are you? Unjani.
Siapila.
Yapila, yes. And Yapila means I'm fine, but it actually means I am alive. I am, yeah, I mean, that's probably like the simplest way I can say in English, but it just means I'm alive. When you say, how are you? I'm alive. I don't know. It's yeah. It's so interesting, like having to like think, you know, like, because it's so normal to just use the language like that. But I think the way we speak is kind of, we just reach more into the soul structure of the person. Yeah.
And so we would say to you, Hambagashle.
Hambagashle, yes.
And maybe
go
you
well.
would, yes, and you would say to us, or I say to everyone, Salagashle.
Yes, Salagashle, stay well. Sala is stay, and Hamba is go. So go well, and Salagashle, yeah. So Hambani gashle, nonke ngiyabonga. Ningilalelile gashle, ngiyantanda, ngiyabonga. Ngiyabonga is thank you.
So you've said to rest well, and you've sent your love. You said thank you. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I love it. Okay. Hambagashle, Hambani gashle.
Gashle.